absolutely perfect. So moving beyond our story, our lives unfold according to the stories we tell ourselves, according to those stories that maybe we're not even aware of, but those are the stories that create the experiences and the people even in our lives, the stories we tell. We can tell empowering stories, or we can tell disempowering stories. I think we probably have all had at least a little bit of experience with that. Michael Hyatt, a successful businessman, shared this. He said, when I was 29 years old, I became vice president of marketing for Thomas Nelson. It was a huge step up in my career. At the time, I thought I had arrived at the pinnacle of success. But I was in over my head. Or at least that's the way it felt. I was just waiting for other people to come to the same conclusion. I struggled constantly with anxiety and fear. Anxiety was the daytime version, and fear was the nighttime version. And he says this manifested itself in my body in two embarrassing ways. First, I would sweat profusely. Second, my hands were always cold, ice cold. When attending important meetings, I would wear 2 t-shirts, hoping that I wouldn't sweat through both of them. I strategically selected my clothing based on which colors would show the least amount of perspiration. And before meetings, I would frantically run hot water over my hands and dry them vigorously, hoping that they would warm up. I dreaded having to shake hands with anyone. At some point, he goes on to say, I realized that the problem was not in my body, but in my head. I was telling myself a bad story. My story went like this. You're too young for this job. Worse, you don't have the experience. Who do you think you're fooling? It's just a matter of time before everyone in the company sees it. When that happens, you'll be out on the street, right where you should have been all along. He wouldn't say this out loud, but of course, it was the soundtrack that was constantly playing inside his head. Things didn't change for Michael until he became aware of his story. And then he was able to start telling himself a different story. So, what stories are you living your life by? Barbara shares a few disempowering stories. Here are some others that maybe you can relate to, or possibly you know someone who lives with these stories. I'm not good enough, smart enough, healthy enough, I'm not young enough, I'm not old enough, I'm not whatever enough. That not enough story that too many of us are far too familiar with. Another story, I'll never have enough money to go on my dream vacation, or to buy a house, or to retire. I'll never have enough money. Or, my life never has been easy. It's always been hard, and it probably always will be hard. Maybe you know somebody who has lived with some of these stories. You get the idea. They're the limiting negative stories that hold us down and that really keep us from living at our highest and most successful and satisfying level. And yet, we all know people who have changed their story, right? They've changed their story and they've changed their life. Or in Science of Mind speak, we can say, change your thinking, change your life. Because that's what this changing your story is all about. A hard life doesn't prevent you from success unless you're telling yourself it does. Any of these things don't impact you unless you're telling them to yourself and believing them. There are plenty of examples of those who overcame seemingly overwhelming obstacles to do amazingly great things in their lives. And you know, there are just as many who have been born with all of the advantages and all of everything they could ever ask for and still didn't have lives that they were loving, still didn't have lives that they were fulfilled by. So when it comes to writing your story or rewriting your story, let the past go, because your future is not determined by your past. We can make new decisions now, we can write new stories now, and if we're willing to step into them and live them, it's amazing what can happen. So what about your stories? Are they working for you? Are there any that you might like to move beyond in order to get better results in your life? Are your stories enabling you to accomplish and experience what you want in your life? Or do you think one or two of them might be getting in your way? It's a good thing to look at. Now, of course you have to be honest, because like me, you may know some people that are just so addicted to their problems and addicted to the stories that go with them and tell them over and over and over. And some people are not ready, not wanting to let go of their old stories, not wanting to create a new story that will lead them into a greater life. In fact, some folks wear their stories of victimhood and are proud of them, proud to be a victim. Well, our stories tell ourselves, the stories we tell ourselves affect who we become, and they dictate what we believe we can and cannot do. The stories we tell ourselves are what dictate what we believe we can do, what we believe we're never going to be able to do. So in the case of Michael, the businessman, he first noticed that the story he was telling himself was absolutely what was playing out in his life. And once he realized that, it empowered him to say, okay, I'm going to sit down and write a new story, and then I'm going to practice it. His new story went like this.
Good story.
At first, he drew a blank.
There we go.
And then, as the Spirit moved him, he wrote, yes, you're young. That gives you tremendous energy. You also don't have a lot of experience, which is why it's easier for you to think outside the box. God has provided everything you need to be successful in this situation. Even if you fail, you will learn something from it. You can't lose. You can only quit. And you most certainly are not a quitter. So, having a new story changed everything for Michael. It changed the way he showed up. Gradually, even his physical responses to stress disappeared. He no longer had to match his wardrobe to how stressful his meetings might be that day. He no longer had to worry about shaking hands with somebody, afraid of what they might think with his ice-cold hands. He became more confident, more competent, and way more creative. Way more creative. So how can we create a new story? Got some hints. First of all, we can create a new story as we remember the truth that we're co-creating it with the divine. That's what our teaching is all about. We, in concert with the divine creative process, absolutely are in charge of what we are willing to step into, the decisions we make, and whether or not we're willing to be happy, even if we have challenges. No matter what, We are a choice, and we are co-creating this with the divine. We can have a new vision. I love it that, visioning is happening here for the newness that's coming about. And Spirit speaks to us individually and as a group when we say, okay, what's my greatest thing yet to be? What's the next place for me to walk into with my heart open and with love? And then we can remember that the fulfillment of our vision isn't just like manna falling from heaven. It doesn't just show up. It comes in the form of ideas. It comes in the form of new connections that we just happen to make. It comes in the form of hunches and divine guidance and other such things. If we get quiet and listen, and it helps if we say, okay, I am ready for this guidance. Show me now, universe. Show me now. But then we have to step into that. We have to step into our story and fully live it as if it were true even before we see all of the results of it in our life. Things happen first in mind, first in consciousness, and then we can step into those things in our lives as the people and the opportunities and the joyful things that show up for us and the gifts. Our stories affect what we do, where we go, and how we approach life. A powerful story leads to powerful outcomes. A disempowering story leads to disempowering outcomes. So we are at choice. And this is true for us as individuals and as organizations such as Center for Spiritual Living Boulder Valley. We are at choice. Now, here at Center for Spiritual Living Boulder Valley, we are in a time of transition. As I'm retiring, as Leah is moving into the senior minister position, we're in a time of transition and change. And it's important for us to look at the stories we're telling. It's important to kind of look at where they came from, and most importantly, whether or not they will create the outcomes, the results that we want. Now, sometimes, maybe you've never noticed this, but sometimes in times of change, our stories can come from a place of fear. Change can be scary, and change can be uncomfortable. Am I the only one, or have you all noticed that as well? Oh, okay, great. And sometimes when change happens, we make up stories that what has happened in the past is going to happen again. This is going to be just a rerun of what happened before. And those are stories we don't want to hang on to. Absolutely. The week after I announced my retirement, there were some folks that voiced fears that the center would close. There were people that voiced fears, just a few, that Leah might not be able to be the minister because of her job at the university, or that she might not have enough experience to be a senior minister. Well, folks, I took on senior minister role right out of school. It seems to have worked, okay? She has far more experience than I had, far more. I know that the last time a minister retired here, there was a time without a minister. There was a time without a spiritual leader. And I have heard that during that time, there was concern that the center might not be able to afford to stay open. We are in a way different situation now. All of us, we are strong. Love lives here, in me and in the center. Prosperity lives here. Joy lives here. say those things with me. And when you say me, point to me. Point to yourself. All right. Love lives here in me and in the center. Prosperity lives here in me and in the center. Joy lives here in me and in the center. And so it is, folks. And let me assure you, Rev Leah is ready. Now, way back, many months before she finished ministerial school, I said, Leah, let's have dinner. And over dinner, one of the things I said was, you know, I'm not going to be here forever. I'm going to want to retire. Now, I don't think that'll be for a long time, but do you have any interest in possibly taking over once I retire? I want to retire eventually. And she kind of said, oh, I'll think about it, you know. And she's thought about it and you know, kind of came to the idea that you know, I think that'd be a good thing. And that was before she even got out of school. So we talked about the possibility, and we've talked about it from time to time since. Now, I didn't expect to retire so soon, but I want to tell you, it's a good thing I am. Because Leah's path is not to be an assistant minister. Leah's path is not to be an assistant minister. Her path is to be a senior minister. She's too good. She's a strong leader. She has good ideas and lots of valuable experience. Way more experience with people than I ever had when I came into this position. Her consciousness is high. Her commitment to her spiritual practices is deep. And her commitment to serving this community is incredibly deep. I know this one. And you're lucky. Because I had a feeling that if I waited until next year to retire, she probably would be off being a senior minister somewhere else. So you've got a good one, folks. You've got a really good one. And you're going to see her just spread her wings and soar, and all of you with her. All of you with her. She is definitely ready to shine as your senior minister and spiritual director. But of course, Leah can't do this alone. Can't do this alone. Need God, right? She needs God, and she knows that she needs God. She knows that she needs the support of Spirit, the guidance, the blessings of Spirit. She knows that she's got that. Absolutely. And she absolutely knows that she can't do it without all of you. Without all of you. For you are Center for Spiritual Living Boulder Valley. Let's say, I am Center for Spiritual Living Boulder Valley.
I am Center for Spiritual Living Boulder Valley.
Each of you, with your time and your talent and treasure, with your desire to grow spiritually individually, and with your desire to grow this community and share this amazing teaching, you are so vital to this process. And she knows that too, and she knows she's got a good bunch. Absolutely. We all have our stories. Who we are and who we are becoming. But even with those stories, that's not all there is to it. It is absolutely not all there is to it. Because the truth is that you are a spark of the divine. There is within you that light, that life, that has chosen to show up in an amazingly unique way. Some of you very unique. Just saying.
That's being nice.
But in each of us, there is that spark of the divine. There is that amazing part of us that, that knows that we have the ability to use our spiritual practices, meditation and prayer and visioning and all of those things that we teach, that when we use those practices and when we use the principles that we teach, like thoughts become things, and if you want to change your life, you can change your story. As we use those, we can create lives, communities, a world that works for everyone and for all of creation. That's what we're about here, folks. That's what we're about. And so it's vitally important that we as individuals and as a spiritual community move beyond any stories of lack and limitation to create and step into a story of love. Even greater love. I mean, we say love lives here, and Leah and I are working together on our things that will say love lives here, up here, and it's so true. But that's what we are here for. Are you up for that?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. Let's say our affirmation together.
I move beyond any limiting stories to live a life of love, health, abundance, and joy.
And each of you individually, if you are willing to take that on, I invite you to say, and so it is.
And so it is.
I'm going to close with a quote from my good friend, Rev Leah Morgan. I believe that your highest self has brought you to your current location and situation. Live it. Look around at all the opportunities that present themselves to you today and choose to participate. Bring your own personal energy to your community and engage fully in whatever it offers. Eat the food. Listen to the music. Understand the issues. Celebrate the breakthroughs. Make the difference. Wherever you go, there you are. You may as well be there fully. Let's take that into prayer. I absolutely know that we are free, we are unlimited, there are no chains to bind us. We can surrender. We can surrender to our greatest and highest story. I know that for each one of us, this week will bring an opportunity to possibly look at the stories that may have been holding us back, to look closely and decide whether or not that's the story we want to continue living or not. We can then write a new story. We can write it on pencil and paper, we can write it in a computer, we can write it in the stars, we can write it in our mind. But write a new story in any area of our life that we would like to be up-leveled, in any area of our life that we would like to experience greater joy, greater abundance, greater health, greater success. But what I know is that this stuff works. This stuff absolutely works. And so what I claim is that each person's path is filled with all that is needed to look courageously at whatever stories need to be changed, to change those stories and to step into their magnificence in a new way, to step into their creative power in a new way. I absolutely know that each one hearing my voice is blessed. Blessed, blessed, blessed to have all that is needed for the most magnificent lives imaginable. And so we can just, in great gratitude for all of the interesting ways this will come to us, for all of the delightful ways that Spirit will pop gifts up in front of each of us, in this gratitude, I can let it go, know that it is absolutely done for each one in the perfect way, in the perfect time. And so it is.
So it is.
I wrote this song with my buddy Freebo.
Freebo.
That's his name. What are you gonna do? I've known him for years. That's the only name. I don't know if he's Mr. Freebo. I don't know if he has a real name. If he does, I don't know where he is. So Freebo is Freebo. So I want you to help me out with this song. Don't get worried, it's really easy. At the beginning of each verse, there's this little thing, just do a one-word repeat of what I do. So I'll do like, 1, 2. I'm gonna sing,
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 la da 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 da, 'cause that's my thing,
thing,
thing.
thing.
Okay, I think you got it.
Here we go. Well, I am pure,
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 pure potentiality. And that's a cure,
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 cure.
a sure cure for negativity. Each and every morning brings a brand new day to reinvent my story in a brand new way. 'Cause I know I am pure potentiality. Pure potentiality. Now I can see,
See, see,
all the joy that's there for me. I'm proud to be all the love that I came here to be. I'm working with my ego at the best I can. And never mind amigo, there's a master plan. 'Cause my true self is pure potentiality. Pure potentiality. All these voices, Krishna, Allah, Jesus, and the Buddha too. All these choices, but all I really gotta be is the best me I can be. So watch me grow,
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 into my new reality. I gotta flow,
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 flow.
into all these possibilities. They're saying that the planet's in an awful mess. I'm thinking we can change it with our consciousness. 'Cause I know we are all potentiality. Yes, I know we're all pure potentiality. I gotta sing the bridge again because it's so much fun. All these voices, Krishna, Allah, Jesus, and the Buddha too. All these choices, but all I really gotta be is the best I can be. So watch me grow,
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 into my new reality. I gotta flow,
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 flow.
into all these possibilities. They're saying that the planet's in an awful mess. I'm thinking we can change it with our consciousness. I know we're all pure potentiality. Pure potentiality. Pure potentiality. Pure
potentiality.
Yes, that's me. Pure potentiality. Just let it be. Pure potentiality. Yes, I know we're all pure potentiality.
Geez, didn't even need to speak today. Every song has just been
Magic.
yes.
My job description, man.
It's working. Keep this guy. Yeah.
So it is.
Okay, this is the time in our service when we get to share our pure potentiality, share the pure potentiality of our center by sharing our gifts and our tithes and our offerings. And before that, I want to thank you all for that, because we have a board that is doing good with your money, paying good attention, spending it wisely, and we are in good shape. So thanks to you, it continues to grow. Let's say our affirmation together. This
gift is spirit in form, circulating and blessing all it touches. Freely I give, and joyously I receive, and so it is.
God is my source. God is my power. God gives me everything I need. So I